What if one wrong text could change your whole life? Maya Smith, a simple young woman, accidentally sends a fiery message to the billionaire boss of her company, William Johnson. Minutes later, black cars surround her home, and her quiet life is thrown into a storm of danger, secrets, and unexpected romance. From fear to trust, from strangers to soulmates, this is the breathtaking journey of how a mistake turned into a love story that touched not only two hearts, but also an entire society. A thrilling, heart-melting story you'll never forget. Maya Smith leaned back in her worn-out chair, her shoulders aching from hours bent over design drafts no one seemed to care about. Her small studio apartment was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that reminded her she was alone. Her phone buzzed, another work notification, and frustration swelled in her chest like a storm. She clenched her teeth, her fingers flying over the screen as she typed out the words that had been burning inside her heart for weeks. I'm done working for bosses who don't even care if we live or starve. If I could, I'd text the billionaire himself and tell him what I think. Her thumb hit send before she realized she had chosen the wrong contact. The message didn't go to her best friend. Instead, her phone displayed something that made her blood run cold. Message sent to William Johnson. Maya's eyes widened. Her pulse slammed in her ears. She stared at the glowing screen, praying it was just a coincidence. But deep inside, she knew it wasn't. That name, William Johnson, wasn't just familiar. It was the name everyone in her company whispered with both awe and fear. The billionaire CEO, the man who owned everything, including the tiny design studio that barely paid her bills. Her heart squeezed tight, as if invisible hands were pressing against her chest. "What have I done?" she whispered into the silence of her room. She thought about deleting the message, but it was too late. The words had already flown across invisible wires, straight to the most powerful man she had ever known existed. Her hands trembled as she gripped her phone. Every second felt like an hour. Every tick of the clock echoed louder and louder. Maybe he wouldn't see it. Maybe his number was fake. Maybe fate was playing a cruel joke. She tried to laugh at herself, but her throat was too tight. Her lips quivered, and she placed the phone down on the table as if it were burning her skin. Her body begged her to breathe, but her lungs felt frozen. Then, the ground beneath her seemed to vibrate. The sound was low at first, like a hum rolling through the streets. Her window panes rattled. Her small lamp shook against the table. Her breath caught. Headlights sliced through her thin curtains. She rushed to the window, her legs weak, her palms clammy. And there they were. Sleek black cars pulling up in perfect formation, their polished surfaces gleaming under the dim streetlights. Her knees nearly gave out. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. The doors of the cars opened with sharp clicks, one after another. Men in dark suits stepped out, their movements precise, practiced, and terrifyingly calm. They didn't look like neighbors. They didn't look like ordinary workers. They looked like shadows wrapped in power. Maya's breath hitched, her throat dry as desert sand. Her eyes darted back to the phone on her table. Had she really texted the billionaire boss himself? Her pulse thundered. Her mind screamed at her to hide, to pretend she wasn't home, to crawl under the bed and wait for it all to vanish. But her body stayed frozen in place, staring out at the street below, as if chained to the moment. The world outside her window wasn't the same anymore. It had shifted, twisted, and pulled her into something bigger, something she didn't understand. A single wrong text, born from frustration and exhaustion, had shattered the fragile line between her simple life and his world of power. And now, Maya Smith wasn't just another worker in a forgotten corner of his empire. She was the woman who had dared to press send. The question burned in her chest like fire. Would this be the mistake that destroyed her life? Or the one that changed it forever? The knock at Maya's door was not just loud. It was thunder. Each strike against the thin wood seemed to shake her small apartment to its bones. Her legs felt weak, her palms slick with sweat, but something stronger than fear pushed her toward the door. She turned the knob with trembling fingers. The moment the door cracked open, her breath caught in her throat. Men in black suits filled her doorway like a wall of shadows. They were tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes scanning every corner of her tiny home as if danger lurked in the folds of her curtains. They didn't speak. They didn't move unnecessarily. They were simply there, watchful, unshakable, intimidating. And then she saw him. In the center of them all stood a man whose very presence made the air feel heavier. William Johnson, the billionaire. The man whose name carried weight in every boardroom, whose decisions could shake entire industries. Yet here he was, standing in her dimly lit apartment hallway, towering in his dark tailored suit that fit him with ruthless perfection. He wasn't loud, he didn't need to be. Power clung to him like a second skin. His gaze swept across her apartment, her worn couch, the small table stacked with sketches, the chipped paint on the walls. It was the kind of look that could strip a soul bare, and then his eyes locked on hers. Those eyes, icy blue yet burning with something fierce, made her forget how to breathe. They were both fire and ice, both distant and devastatingly close. He studied her as if she was the only thing that mattered in that moment. "Miss Smith," he said, his voice smooth but heavy, like velvet with steel hidden inside. "Do you always text billionaires when you're angry? Or was today special?" Her knees threatened to buckle. Her lips parted, but no sound came at first. When her voice finally emerged, it was shaky, broken by nerves. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I didn't mean—" But before she could finish, William lifted his hand slightly, silencing her with nothing more than a gesture. It wasn't rude, it wasn't cruel. It was commanding. His lips curved, not quite into a smile, not quite into a frown. Something unreadable, something that sent shivers down her spine. "Funny thing about mistakes," he murmured. "They often reveal the truth more than words spoken carefully." The silence that followed was suffocating, but not empty. It was thick, charged, like the moment before lightning splits the sky. Maya's cheeks burned with heat. Her mind screamed at her to explain, to fix what she had broken, to somehow take the message back. But her heart was caught in the way he looked at her. Because William Johnson wasn't just irritated or amused. No, there was something else in his gaze. Something dangerous yet curious. Something that told her he hadn't expected to find her, the woman bold enough or foolish enough to speak truth directly to his name. His eyes lingered on her longer than they should have, as if he wasn't just seeing a frightened employee in a small apartment, but a woman who had unknowingly stepped across the invisible line into his world. And for the first time in her life, Maya realized that her voice, her accidental words, had reached a man no one else dared to challenge. Her pulse quickened. Her chest tightened. The air between them wasn't just heavy. It was alive. Before Maya could gather her scattered courage to explain herself, movement cut through the tension. William's head of security stepped forward with urgent precision, his voice firm but low. "Sir, we need to move. It's not safe here." The words landed like stones in Maya's stomach. Not safe? Her small apartment was plain, quiet, almost invisible in the city. What could possibly be dangerous here? Her voice shook as she whispered, What do you mean, not safe?" Her fingers curled against her chest, trying to calm the racing of her heart. William turned toward her slowly, his gaze sharper than glass, his jaw tight. He didn't flinch, didn't waver. When he spoke, his tone was calm, steady as if he carried the weight of storms without breaking. "Your message," he said, his eyes never leaving hers, "came at a time when my company is under threat. Someone out there wants information I protect, and now that you've contacted me, they might believe you know something." The room spun around her. Her knees weakened. She pressed a hand to the wall to keep from sliding to the floor. She had done nothing but send a wrong text. One foolish, frustrated mistake. And suddenly, she wasn't just a tired designer in a quiet apartment. She was a target in a billionaire's dangerous world. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. She tried to form words, to tell him she wasn't part of anything, that she was just a nobody. But when her lips parted, no sound came. William stepped closer, the warmth of his presence mixing with the icy chill of fear that surrounded her. His eyes, piercing yet unreadable, locked onto hers. And in them she saw something unexpected, concern. "You have two choices," he said firmly. "Stay here and risk danger, or come with me, where I can protect you." His words fell heavy, and for a moment time seemed to stop. Her instincts screamed at her to say no, to cling to the only life she knew. Her tiny apartment might be shabby, but it was hers. The thought of being swept away into his dark, unpredictable world terrified her. But then she looked at him again. At the way he stood tall, a fortress of calm even as shadows of threat pressed against them. At the way his voice held no hesitation, no doubt, only a promise. At the way his gaze searched hers, not with arrogance, but with a strange kind of trust. Something shifted inside her chest. Her fear was still there, wild and trembling, but beneath it, something softer bloomed. A strange trust, fragile but real, curled its way into her heart. Her lips parted, trembling. Her throat was dry, but the words came out like a secret she wasn't supposed to speak. "I'll go," she whispered. William's gaze softened, just for a heartbeat. The corner of his lips twitched, almost like relief, though his face quickly hardened again. He nodded once, decisive. "Then you're under my protection now," he said quietly. And those words, those 6 simple words, wrapped around Maya like invisible armor. The guards moved swiftly, efficient and silent, as if they had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. One motioned her forward, another secured the hallway, their presence both terrifying and oddly reassuring. Maya grabbed her small purse, her fingers fumbling. Her eyes swept her little apartment, her drawings, her chipped coffee mug, the blanket draped over her chair. It felt like she was leaving her entire life behind in one fragile instant. Her heart thundered as William placed a steadying hand at the small of her back, guiding her toward the door. His touch was firm, protective, and it sent shivers racing down her spine. The night outside was cool, the air sharp with city sounds. The black cars waited, their engines humming low, lights cutting through the shadows. Maya hesitated, her body frozen between fear and trust. William leaned close, his voice low, meant only for her. "You don't have to be afraid," he murmured. "As long as you're with me, no one will touch you." Her chest tightened. Her fear didn't vanish, but his words lit a fragile flame of safety inside her. She climbed into the car beside him. The door shut with a solid thud, sealing her fate. And as the convoy pulled away from the curb, Maya realized that her life would never, ever be the same. The convoy of black cars sliced silently through the sleeping city. Maya sat stiffly in the leather seat, her hands clenched in her lap, her heart pounding like a drum that refused to slow. Beside her, William sat composed, his profile lit faintly by the glow of passing streetlights. He didn't fidget. He didn't shift nervously. He was stillness wrapped in control. But Maya's mind was chaos. She was leaving behind her small, ordinary life and being carried into a world she had only glimpsed in magazines and whispered office gossip. Her chest tightened as the cars left the city's busy streets and began winding through long, tree-lined roads. Finally, the convoy slowed, pulling through towering iron gates. Beyond them stretched William's private estate. Maya's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't the loud, glittering mansion she had imagined. It didn't scream for attention. Instead, it stood tall and timeless, with wide stone walls, quiet gardens, and guards stationed so discreetly they almost blended into the shadows. It wasn't a house, it was a fortress. The car door opened, and William stepped out first. For a moment, she hesitated, clutching her bag like a shield. Then his hand extended toward her, steady and waiting. Her breath hitched, but she placed her trembling fingers in his. His grip was warm, firm, reassuring. Inside the mansion was a world of contrasts. Yes, there were marble floors and chandeliers, but what struck her most were the details. Walls lined with books, not just for show, but worn, read, loved. Paintings, some priceless, others simple, personal. She saw pieces of a man who lived here, not just a billionaire who owned it. Maya's steps echoed as she followed him down the hall. Her eyes drank in every corner, torn between awe and disbelief. This wasn't just wealth, it was power wrapped in silence. But then something shifted. What surprised her most wasn't the mansion. It was William himself. She had expected arrogance, the kind of cold ruthlessness that came with his reputation. But instead she saw him in moments that unsettled her heart. He loosened his tie as he walked. He made late-night coffee in the kitchen himself, pouring water, grinding beans like it was a familiar ritual. He listened when she spoke, really listened, his eyes fixed on her, not on his phone, not on anyone else. And more than anything, she saw something she hadn't expected: loneliness. It clung to him like a shadow no light could erase. As hours passed, the clock sliding into late night, they found themselves sitting across from each other in his vast study. A fire burned softly in the hearth, painting his face in golden light. "You think I don't care about the people who work for me?" William said at last, his voice low, roughened by honesty. His gaze stayed on the flames as if afraid to meet hers. "But you don't see the sleepless nights. You don't see the sacrifices." Maya's breath caught. For the first time, his words weren't layered in control or power. They were raw. She looked at him, really looked. Behind the sharp suit, behind the billionaire mask, was a man worn down by choices no one else understood. He wasn't untouchable, he was human, tired, heavy with burdens, and aching for something real. Her heart softened. Every wall she had built against him crumbled piece by piece, because this wasn't the William Johnson the world feared. This was William, the man who had carried too much alone. Their eyes finally met. In his, she saw exhaustion, yes, but also longing, like he wanted to be seen, not as a billionaire, but as a man. And in hers, he found no fear, no judgment, only quiet understanding. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full, alive, carrying something neither of them wanted to admit yet. For the first time in years, William let down his guard. And for the first time in her life, Maya felt her heart pull towards someone she should have feared. Something fragile, dangerous, and beautiful had begun. Neither of them could stop it. Neither of them wanted to. The night inside William's estate had been strangely peaceful. The air was quiet, the soft ticking of an antique clock echoing through the halls. Maya sat close to William, her heart still tangled in confusion, caught between the fear of being here and the unexpected warmth she felt when he looked at her. But then, suddenly, chaos shattered the stillness. An alarm blared from deep within the mansion. Red lights pulsed faintly along the walls, and within seconds, shadows of men in black suits moved swiftly across the estate's grounds. Maya's heart jumped to her throat. She froze, staring at the windows where figures were moving, her chest tightening with panic. "What's happening?" she whispered, her voice trembling, fear rushing through her veins like ice. William's jaw clenched, but his voice was steady, commanding, strong. "A breach. Someone tried to get past my security lines." He reached for her hand without hesitation, his grip warm and firm, pulling her closer to him. "Stay behind me, Maya. I won't let anyone touch you." His words cut through the chaos like a shield. For the first time, she saw not just a billionaire, not just a man wrapped in power and wealth, but someone who was willing to stand between her and danger. Her pulse hammered in her ears as heavy footsteps echoed outside the door. Guards shouted, their radios crackling with updates. William stood tall, his frame shielding hers as though nothing else mattered. The world could crumble, enemies could come, but he would not move an inch away from her. Maya's breath caught when she realized her fingers had instinctively tightened around his. His hand, strong yet gentle, didn't let go. He held her as though she belonged there, as though protecting her was not a duty, but something deeply personal. Minutes stretched like hours, then a signal. The tension broke as one of the guards rushed in. "False alarm, sir. A drone over the perimeter. We neutralized it." The sound of relief swept through the room, but Maya couldn't calm the racing of her heart. She turned to William, her eyes wide, searching his face. He was still standing protectively before her, his chest rising and falling, his sharp features softened by the flickering lights of the alarm now fading away. In that silence, Maya finally spoke, her voice raw and aching with questions. "Why me, William? Why bring me here? Why put me under this kind of protection? You don't even know me." William turned to her, his piercing gaze no longer cold but warm, achingly human. His hand reached up, brushing a strand of hair away from her cheek. His voice dropped low, almost breaking. "Because you were the first person in years who dared to tell me the truth. Everyone else fears me, bows to me, tells me what I want to hear. But you You looked me in the eye and told me what you really thought. Do you know how rare that is in my world?" Maya's lips parted, her breath shaky. She wanted to speak but couldn't. His words struck too deep, unraveling something inside her. William's expression softened, his vulnerability slipping past his walls. "And because, Maya—" He hesitated for just a heartbeat, his eyes holding hers with intensity that made her chest ache. "I don't want to let you go." Her heart melted, completely. For the first time in her life, Maya felt what it meant to be truly seen. Not for her mistakes, not for her ordinary life, but for her honesty, her courage, her soul. And as she looked at William, a man the world called untouchable, she realized he wasn't untouchable at all. He was a man aching for connection, a man who in that moment chose her. And Maya knew her life would never be the same again. Weeks later, Maya's life was unrecognizable. She wasn't just the girl who sent the wrong text anymore, she was the woman who taught a billionaire to see beyond wealth. William began changing his company policies, caring for his workers in ways Maya had once only dreamed about. He even started visiting the small offices himself, listening, learning, understanding. And in the middle of all the change, their bond grew. The billionaire and the girl who texted him by mistake had found something priceless. Love built on honesty, respect, and trust. One evening, William stood in the garden of his estate, holding Maya's hand. "That wrong text," he whispered, "was the best mistake of my life." Maya smiled through happy tears. "And the best choice of mine was opening the door when you knocked." They kissed under the soft glow of the garden lights, two hearts from different worlds beating as one. Lesson for society. This story teaches us that honesty and courage can bridge even the widest gaps. It reminds us that wealth means nothing without compassion, and that love often begins where fear once lived.